and to ensure that at the end of the day, we are serving our country in the best way possible. We ask that you give joining mercies to all of us who are here and to go back to where we're from and to hasten those footsteps that are to arrive. These are the mercies we ask in your dear name's sake. Amen.
Thank you, Member Paul. Members, I apologize for the late start, and I'd also like to tender apologies for Mr. Dunn and Mrs. Holness, who will not be able to attend. Before we start, I'd like to welcome on your behalf the 10 students from the University of the West Indies School of Nursing. Welcome to your parliament, and I hope you have a pleasant day here with us. Members, today, just a few points. Number one, the Minister of Finance and Public Service has tabled the supplementary estimates. He has asked that we take them next week. He will not be in the country on Tuesday, so we're not going to do it on Tuesday in the way we have done it in the past, which has been very difficult for us to be able to deliberate on the supplementary and then do a report to table to Parliament before the Finance Committee. So we'll have more time this time, and what I'm suggesting is that we meet on Wednesday. We were to have taken a number of things on Wednesday, and what I will do is we'll push back 2 weeks, and so next week Wednesday we will take both, and I'm suggesting we take both the supplementary budget and the fiscal policy paper and bring the Ministry of Finance once. If members so desire, we had also asked that we had some issues. We had asked them to bring what's the name of that committee that oversees the tax compliance certificate? Amalgamation Committee. They were to have brought a number of agencies because they are the persons who are getting the fiscal, who are getting their TCC, the delay in getting it. So we're just asking them to come and tell us the mechanism with which we do it. For us to make suggestions, if there's something that can be done to speed it up, because it is one of those things that all companies have to do, and if it is taking weeks and months to do it, it's going to slow the rate of doing business. So the first point I would suggest is that we attempt to take all three with the Ministry of Finance and get them through next week Wednesday. So if members agree to that, I'll ask Mrs. Bailey to push ahead. Are we in agreement? All right. So next week Wednesday is which date? That would be the 2nd. Now, on the 7th, 2nd, so the 9th would be the following Wednesday. All things being equal, the 9th, we will take the other, we had asked a number of questions at the last meeting, and we'll try and take those on the 9th, and then we will take the break the following week. We meet 3 weeks and then take 1 week afterwards. So we would take off the week of the 16th, that would be. All right. So that is the agenda. Members, just one thing I'd like to say. There time to time we see things on the news and different places that just open up. I don't know if I was the only one that saw it, but I saw on TV a few nights ago the persons who apply for their police, what the police record, and we understood that there were all sorts of problems and it had been closed. There are some real issues there. Why this is of interest to me certainly is that even in the tourism sector and many other sectors, if you're getting even a taxi license, a juta, whatever it is, everybody has to get a police record, or a large number of them. If this is a breakdown, I think it is incumbent on us at some point to ask the relevant authorities to give us a report as to why that is, and if necessary, we can follow up on it. Well, hold on, one at a time.
I believe a public statement was made to the effect that the building was a sick building.
Yes.
And had been ordered closed by the Ministry of Health.
You're right.
Yes. The Ministry of Health.
That was a sick building.
And closed the building for it being
so what's happening now?
And they would remedy the issue, and it would reopen after a week. So I don't expect that it will be continuing. But we could make a check notwithstanding.
Yeah. So but we're at the end. Our members.
Chairman, that it's over a week now, and it is really burdensome on even the farm workers who should be getting their records. They have been lined up there and they don't know where to go, and nobody has been saying anything to them, and it's a matter of urgency.
Yeah.
Well, my understanding is that the place was closed, and they have identified a new location. But when the officers went to the new location, there was also another concern as it relates to the new location. There are some challenges there, and they have made some suggestion as to what needs to be done to rectify the problem at the new location.
I think, member, what we're all saying is that there's a problem and there are some moves to fix it. But right. I think it's incumbent on us to get an official report on what the reality is. And if when that report comes in, and we can ask them to give us a report by the meeting next week. If when we get that report you have questions, we can ask them to come. But we certainly have to move now, because as I said, it is putting everybody else into, and I mean, just for myself, I'm not certain, but is it that there's only a location in Kingston to get that?
There are locations in Maypen and Montego Bay.
Okay, good.
The Maypen persons are saying that they can't do certain transactions. It has to come to Kingston.
I'm just making the point that I've heard from persons that they have to go to Kingston to get their reports.
Chairman.
And I'm just, it's questions to ask. I'm not saying that that is
no, the satellite station will do the necessary paperwork, but everything now is sent to Kingston to process and then send back to Montego Bay or Maypen. But if you need it urgently and don't want to wait the 3 weeks, then you come straight to Kingston.
Yeah.
So the process in Montego Bay, so it is very relevant that Kingston still is up and running, because it is a feeder center for everywhere.
No, I think we're all in agreement here. Member Jackson?
Sorry, Chairman, pardon the poor state of my voice.
Member
I'm
Campbell
sad
was
that
hoping.
my colleague is celebrating
Member Campbell behind you was hoping you would
poor
lose
health.
it.
Mr. Chairman, the matter
Yes.
at hand. The location at Duke Street is where all the processing is centrally done.
Yes.
The outstation is for collecting the applications and prints and so, but the processing is literally done.
Yes.
The issue at hand is that the services that are provided there, which generate over $1 billion per year in revenues,
Yes.
is critical to a number of different parts of the economy. You mentioned one, tourism, financial services,
Farm work.
farm work,
Hotel work,
a
yeah.
lot of the regulated entities rely upon the police record to certify applications and to renew applications. I think what is urgent to be done is for an alternate arrangement on an interim basis. We understand the emergency situation with the building being unhealthy for the workers, and you can't keep them there. But you must make arrangement on a temporary basis to get the job done until you can restore a permanent site either there or at some alternate location. So it is the immediate arrangements to provide the services which so many sectors of the economy relies upon.
Okay. All right, members. All right, do you have another issue? Yes.
Chair, last week we had made a request, especially of the CMU Ministry of Education, on the CMU update. Yeah? But I think it is more urgent now because I'm understanding that the CAP program under the CMU have been abruptly discontinued. Right, and I remember during our deliberations we had issue with the CAP and CAPS program with CMU, but
do you have confirmation of this, or are you?
Yes, I have confirmation of it.
That
I have confirmation of it, but we would want to know what.
You want a report as to why
yes.
it has been discontinued,
Yes.
and quite frankly, given the glowing reports that we were getting about it, why would it be discontinued?
But also, remember, there was an issue of students getting certificates, getting their stipend. All of those issues were outstanding. So last week we had said we wanted an update, but it is more critical now.
We had indicated, Ms. Bailey, so we would really want to find out about the CAPEX program as to it being discontinued and the reasons
CAP
for
program.
it.
All the programs that were financed either through the Ministry of Education, HEART, CAP program that was administered by the CMU.
And remember, we had asked that the information comes. So even though next week we will be doing the Ministry of Finance, we
Still
need
would like
the information
Yes.
prior to the meeting so members can look at it so we can make a decision as to what because put persons on notice, we intend to see these issues through on the meeting of the 9th.
Yes, but also before you go, member, this is a second year in running that the HEART NYS summer work program has also been abruptly stopped in the middle of the program. You have students who had signed up on the second tranche of the summer work program that was sent a message that they were not to turn up. They went for orientation and then was notified that the program had stopped. And those who were on the first tranche having a problem in getting the stipend that they were supposed to get. And this is the second year that this has happened to students who we have recommended for this program. So if we can get also a report from the HEART, because remember now, NYS was merged with the HEART Foundation, right? But if we can get a report on why this is happening, because as I said before, Chair, that this is the second year that I noticed that this has happened.
All right, Ms. Bailey, you got that?
Chair,
yes.
there's an addition there. May we also request a full report on the unattached youth program? Because from the Ministry of Education, we have had several hundred youths who have signed up for the program, and it has not started at all. In my own constituency, 250 young persons are waiting a call, and we need to find out what has been happening there.
So that is part of the report for next week, but I think that we're going to have to start. Pardon? Oh, good. All right. Well, as I said, hence why we need to ensure we get the reports prior till next week so we can send out the invitations. All right, members, with that, I would like to invite the Ministry of Agriculture in. Members, I'm going to, could we, hello? Agriculture. Members, I think a number of us have to leave. I'm going to ask that we try and finish our deliberations by 12:30 today, if that's okay for members. Otherwise, you know, I know you're usually at 12. Well, I'm happy. I know. All right, and all right, and members, what I'm going to ask is that we take some of the issues as a priority, so we can have some discussions on them, rather than just go through because of the time constraints. Certainly for myself, I'd like to bring the CLA up a bit, the cannabis licensing, but I don't know if there are any other. I know there were some discussions on SCJ holdings.
Well, SCJ is here as number 2, but if we can bring Agro Invest before Company's Office.
All right, so we can bring that up as well. All right, some of the others, and we'll move them as quickly as possible. What is national account? All right, let me. All right, welcome back, Ministry. I see you're Mr. Spence from right. Okay, so good. So members, as I indicated, we're hoping today that we will be able to move through quickly and try and finish off what we can. So I'll turn it over to the Permanent Secretary and indicate that we can start, and then, as I said earlier, we're going to move. We have a list of agencies here. If there are some comments you want to make or any introductions, we leave that up to you now. And then what we're asking is that members have asked that we could take the Cannabis Licensing Authority, because there's some information we'd like there. And of course, we're asked Agro-Invest Corporation and SCJ Holdings Limited. And then we'll take the others. We have some time constraints today, so I'm going to hope that we can move quickly, because we're hoping to finish your ministry today. So with that, I turn it over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the PAAC body of Parliament. It is our pleasure to appear this morning as departments and agencies of the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries. And I'll just make some brief opening notes and introduce the team. In its trust to attain a sustained level of contribution to the industry, commerce, agriculture and fisheries sectors to economic growth, MICAF, as configured, is dedicated to facilitating and providing public value by creating an enabling environment which grows and sustains industries in these related sectors. The Ministry seeks to build synergies between and among all its entities to allow for inclusiveness across all stakeholder interests, ensuring that the services which are provided are demand-driven, customer-centered, and cost-effectively delivered. The Ministry, through its 3 long-term goals of competitive, diversified, and market-oriented agriculture, manufacturing, and services sectors that proactively manages risk, strengthen business environment including national quality infrastructure and reduce bureaucracy, sustainable agriculture, health and food safety systems and nutrition security, protected consumers, fair business practices within competitive economic spaces, and institutionalized quality management systems within the Ministry and its agencies. These goals are all aligned to the Vision 2030 National Development Plan. GOJ's strategic priority of sustainable growth and job creation provides a planning framework which drives our 8 policy priorities identified and being pursued in the strategic business plan for the period 2019, 2020 to 22-23. The ultimate goal of these priority pursuits is to realize a full value chain development in all sectors and to maximize returns and the achievement of predictable, sustained economic growth for the sector and overall contribution to the national economy. The agencies represented here today have significant aspects of policy responsibility to ensure the optimization of production of key local agriculture production and business development targeting, business registration and development facilitation, new and emerging industries and business development, agricultural land asset management, providing business and agriculture extension services, promoting agriculture and agro-processing investment facilitation, promotion of fair trade and consumer protection, production and manufacturing quality standards certification. With this milieu of agencies, attendant policy and legislation, adequate budgetary provisions reflects MICAF's commitment to ensuring the synergy that the critical enabling environment necessary will exist to allow for an expansion in the critical sectors which drive economic growth. We are happy to be here today to engage with the PAAC as best as possible. However, present here today are agencies that fall within the ministry and senior officers of the ministry, to include myself, the permanent secretary. I am Dermot Spence. Ms. Michelle Parkins, Principal Director for Planning and Policy. Delroy Coley, Senior Director for Strategic Planning.
Could a person just indicate who they are with the name?
Yeah,
So we could.
just hold up your hand as
Just
your
hold
name
up
is
your hand
called.
or give an indication by standing or something. Or just hold up your hand. Okay, so I'll start. Ms. Michelle Parkins, Principal Director for Planning and Policy. Delroy Coley, Senior Director for Strategic Planning. Ms. Monique Gibbs, Chief Technical Director, Industry and Commerce Portfolio. Dr. Roy McNeil, Chief Technical Director, Special Projects. Ms. Anne-Marie Tomlinson, our Principal Financial Officer. Ms. Margarita Sherwood. She's not here. All right. Sorry about that. From the Consumer Affairs Agency, we have Mrs. Dulcie Allen, the Chief Executive Director. From the Fair Trading Commission, we have Mr. David Miller, the Executive Director. From the Bureau of Standards of Jamaica, we have Mr. Hopeton Heron, Executive Director, supported by Mr. Rowan Anderson, Manager for Finance and Accounts, and Mrs. Loris Edwards Brown, the Chief Executive Officer for the NCRA, National Compliance Regulatory Authority. We also have from the RADA, Mr. Peter Thompson, the Chief Executive Officer, supported by Mr. Gaynor, who is the Director of Finance. Right. From the National Irrigation Commission, we have Mr. Joseph Giles, the Chief Executive Officer, and Mr. Milton Henry, the Director for Projects in the NIC. From the Agro Invest Corporation, we have Dr. Alexander Powell, the Chief Executive Officer. supported by Ms. Kadiana Rambali, the Chief Financial Officer, and Mr. Owen Scarlett, who is the Director of Agri-Parks. From the CLA, Cannabis Licensing Authority, we have Mr. Lincoln Allen, who is the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Michael Boyd, the Director of Finance and Accounting. Company Office of Jamaica, COJ, we have Mrs. Judith Ram-Logan, the Chief Executive Officer, and Mr. Carlisle Gray, the Director for Finance, Risk and Asset Management. And from the SCJH Holding, Sugar Corporation of Jamaica Holdings Limited, we have Mr. Joseph Shukir, the Managing Director, and Mr. Vivian is not here. We have Mr. Joseph Shukir. Chairman, that represents the team and my opening statements.
All right.
Sorry, Chairman, just one more, just before Mr. Colin Henry, who is the Director for Marketing and Special Projects, is also here from RADA. Mr. Henry? Yes.
Members, you will have in front of you a submission that we got about some additional information with regards to the discussion we had with JAMPRO and Exim Bank, or competitiveness in doing business. And I looked at it and it just jumped out at me because it is something we're going to have to comment on in our report, members. And I'll just read the introduction to the document. This is the document. Right. Yes, well, it says here, notwithstanding all the progress made through the Trade Facilitation Program and other complementary programs, Jamaica remains relatively uncompetitive as it treats to trading across borders when compared to its neighbors. It should be noted that Jamaica is not doing worse off in terms of reform. However, our neighbors and trading partners are implementing trade reforms at a faster and more efficient pace. Now, yeah, that's a bit of a contradiction. And if we are going to be looking at export, if we're looking at what we do, what I see here is unacceptable. And I go through, we have gotten a full list of issues. And I just point out a few. And it seems to me that Bahamas has similar issues, but I look at Dominican Republic and Panama as two of the countries that you would want to sort of compare with. The time to export, your border compliance, the time, Jamaica is 58 hours, the DOM rep is 16, and Bahamas 24. The second thing is the cost to export, which is they have taken into account all the costs associated. The Dominican Republic was 488. Panama was 270. Jamaica is 876. Again, for completeness, Bahamas is 512 and the Latin America, LAC is 529. But that 876 really is very high. And in terms of the time to export, which they had sort of done a survey, and it's documented, they put the actual components in it, into this document. But the time to export for Bahamas was 12 hours to prepare everything for export. Dominican Republic was 10. Panama is 6. So in other words, in less than an 8-hour day, you could get your documents. And Jamaica is 47. So in other words, just looking at this, in a day you could get your documentations. In Panama, it's going to take you over a week in Jamaica. And there were a number of other things, the cost to export, the documentary compliance. I mean, whereas Bahamas is way out of whack in this one with 550, we are 90 Panama is 60 and the Dominican Republic is 15. I'm not going to go through anymore, but what it really says to us is that if we are going to really tackle economic growth, you can't go into the export market if you're this uncompetitive. So I'm not certain how we would proceed with this, but certainly our recommendation must be to the Parliament that more attention must be paid. My thought was, and I'm not, but my thought was 3 years ago when the growth committee, the what's it called? No, it's not the committee. It's the the economic growth committee, the growth council, the economic growth council. Yes, my understanding was that one of the things that we had indicated that there were issues and that these were some of the things that would be tackled. So if 3 years later we are here, it is a cause for concern. Yeah, Mr.
Well, I accept your point, though. If we are going to take a proper analytical view of that situation in terms of what have been applied since the Economic Growth Council, we'd have to look at a
comparative.
Comparative
you mean we might
in
have been
relation to what
you're
it
saying
was.
you might have been worse.
No, what it was then and where we are coming from. We might be coming from.
No. I'm not. Yeah,
yeah,
but
so,
I'm agreeing with you.
Yes,
but as I said to you,
we are not comfortable. I agree. But we look at where we are coming from.
No, let me tell you what makes me most uncomfortable about this. Paragraph 2 of the report from the ministry with responsibility for this. It says, it should be noted that Jamaica is not doing worse off in terms of reform. However, our neighbors and trading partners are implementing trade reforms at a faster and more efficient pace.
I agree, but what are the hindrances? Maybe those hindrances could be as a result of where we were then. We never know. If we're going to analyze, we must look at
the only point I would make, and with all due respect, one of the things is I'm not getting into the now and then.
I'm just saying, if we are going to look at it, then we must.
Remember, what I'm saying is that what occurs to me is that we do have a problem, and it has to be resolved. I don't think I'm not throwing out to cast blame. I'm throwing out the fact that it must be resolved. Member Baldwin?
Chairman, as we were at pains to highlight last week, there does seem to be a disconnect. There appears to be overlapping responsibilities. And perhaps what is necessary to deal with this specific issue is a special sitting of our committee, because the subject matter seems to be diffused. There's this conglomerate ministry called Economic Growth, but there's this ministry that is responsible for growth.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that they are not being given the attention and the resources that they deserve. So if we could isolate a day when we can come here and deal with competitiveness, I would like, if that is agreed on, to again spend some time looking at some of the functions of this body that ought to enable greater growth, such as the role of the SCJ, the Cannabis Licensing Authority. I know that there are agencies there on the commerce, and I think they're doing their job well. The Companies Office of Jamaica, I'm not too sure if we want to detain them here everlastingly. I think the Bureau of Standards do their work well. I'm not too sure we want to detain them here everlasting.
Fair Trade Commission.
And of course the FTC and so on. And pardon my familiarity with those bodies.
What about the Companies Office? No, I'm taking you as a...
Yes.
Sorry, yeah.
Right.
No,
So-
no,
Yes.
not to cut the conversation, but
Not at all.
if what the member is saying that we should relieve and allow the Companies Office, the Bureau of Standards, the Consumer Affairs Commission and Fair Trade Commission, allow them to go, I would not be,
Yes, I think in fairness to them, they need not be detained here for hours. That's my...
Chairman, having invited the several agencies here, could you just ask them to deal with the issues which arise under Standing Order 73? Because they're obliged to speak to the budget, the expenditure.
okay.
And-
Well,
and
if
I-
that's the case, no, member, once a member would like us to continue, I have no problem. Let's go through the list as necessary. No problem.
I'm yet to hear one body speak to the principal issue, which is why they're here, which is to examine the budgetary expenditure of the government agency.
Yes.
And the second one is to monitor the expenditure. And I haven't heard one of these agencies come here and speak to the principal issues which are set out in
Yes.
Standing Order 73A.
Okay. All right. So we'll proceed. So member Paulwell, no, member Paulwell, please don't be detained.
I'm really challenging...
No, you are, one point was, and so we'll proceed, but you are making the point that you would like to see us have a sitting to deal with competitiveness, because I must admit that this ministry with agriculture, industry and commerce, which includes JAMPRO, really has such an important role in economic growth, that the ministry that is called Economic Growth and Job Creation, there is a bit of a contradiction, and we have to see how both of them are operating. All right, so members, can we proceed? I'm going to proceed, and let us move now to the Cannabis Licensing Authority, if we may. And we'd just like an idea of what was the program of work for the CLA for this year and how it's proceeding.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. But just before we proceed, you make mention of having a special sitting to deal with the matters, but just to help the process, I could highlight just one or two quick points as it relates to the matter of trade facilitation. There's a comprehensive trade facilitation review that is taking place. And there is a team that is in place to lead the process. It involved the border regulatory agencies, the VSD, working with the customs department, as well as with JAMPRO. And as we speak, these matters that are highlighted here are being given attention. There's a consultant that is to come on in October, by the end of October, to look at these matters. Although we have had about 3 consultancies within the context of the program that is in place already. So there is funding that has been provided for review of the border regulatory agencies, and we have been implementing systems. Attendant to that is a MOU that has been signed in terms of ensuring that the duplication is minimized. It speaks to having officers that are cross-trained, that they can take decision on the spot and will not require the plethora of movement from one agency to the other to have some of the movements of goods and services. So something is underway, and it is being, worked on as we proceed, and that can be, further details can be provided when the team appears accordingly.
But, all right, I'm not intended to go any further into it, but that brings some points up. This is obviously, your trade competitiveness is obviously an important part of everything that we're doing towards achieving an end of economic growth. You speak to compliance trade review. When did this start?
The process?
Yes, the compliance trade review. You say it's underway. Is this something that we just
No, it has
stumbled on now, or is
it
this
has
something
been going on for almost a year now, and varying things have been happening. It is funded by a loan from the World Bank, and it is being executed accordingly with varying phases and varying components that are being implemented. Varying consultancy, varying systems in place, and varying arrangements that are prescribed through the consultancy that the government is and the ministry is the ministries and the government is responding to.
All right, so just a question. This sort of process, is it run from your ministry, or is it that there's some input from the Growth Council, or is there some input from the Ministry of Economic Growth, or are these things just independent? Because I ask the question because my understanding is that the Growth Council was to look at some of these things, and they actually have a executive director, is that it? Yeah. They have an executive director who should be looking at these impediments and coordinating for government out of economic growth, how these things are resolved. So
All right.
I'm saying that over this period of time, what has been done? What other than what you're really saying is that a consultant should come on next month. What's happening in the big picture?
No, the consultant coming on is just one additional component of what is the overall big picture.
So what is the overall big picture?
The overall big picture is trade reform. So trade reform, trade facilitation, with the objective being to improve the ease of doing business nationally. So all attendant ministries and agencies are engaged within a project that came as a recommendation out of Growth Council and out of several reviews that recognize the need for these things to happen. So all the different elements, especially, for example, the border regulatory agencies, we have the VSD, we have the planned quarantine body, and so that resides within MICAF, but there's also customs that has a very important role to play. And so the overall committee that leads also reports.
So who is in charge of the committee is what I'm trying to get at.
Well, it was headed by Ms. Pat Francis.
Okay.
Well, still is.
So it meets and guides.
Yes.
Everything.
Yes. But so there's this committee that is there and make prescription. But the process involves, at the end of all of that, an integration of the recommendations into the varying ministries that is going to result in restructuring of the ministries, restructuring of the border regulatory agencies, improvement in technology. So there's varying components that even impact the Ministry of Health. So it's a comprehensive reform process that I think could be properly elucidated at the session that you
the
are.
Point I'm trying to make, sir, and I understand your sort of general response, but when we recognize what we want to achieve, and one of the stated priorities is economic growth, you recognize that there must be some targeted program towards that. So what I've been trying to do is find out where is the top of that targeted program. So when you say, when you now get a document that says that despite us doing reforms, our partners are doing them faster and more efficiently, it sort of lets you feel that maybe we have got to find a way to find out why that is so. And so I was just trying to find out which ministry is leading this charge for economic growth, and how you are involved in that. Members, one of the things that I would ask is a question that's just coming out of this discussion. The Economic Growth Council, it's a it's a partnership, isn't it? It has a board that is private and public sector, and an initiative which I think we had all sort of endorsed. However, the actual implementing of it isn't there. It's a body with an executive director. Is it necessary for us at some point to call that body in and ask for a report on what exactly is being done and how the coordination of it? So maybe that's something that we need to do, is to, ask the executive director of the Economic Growth Council to come and indicate to us, what is being done.
Chairman, with your permission, I want to believe, and I will make the recommendation, the whole issue of the connectivity between the Economic Growth Council, what the Ministry Commerce
right,
is doing,
Industry, Commerce, Agriculture,
and relating the the Trade Facilitation Council or Board. Quite frankly, Chairman, I take your point and your concern, and I share them. But I believe that which you want to achieve is something that more properly belongs to the Economy and Production Committee in terms of how they are articulated, each of the entities and their effectiveness. So the concerns that we would have detected here, I think one of the recommendations we should make is for them all together to examine. Referred. Because it speaks to the whole effectiveness and connectivity of these entities in achieving economic growth, to achieving greater efficiency in public administration, to enable the growth that you're talking about, not only for export, but also for the internal economy in other areas, construction, tourism, etc., etc. So I want to just recommend, Chair, that we look at it in that line. That's my suggestion.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just a little concerned in regards to our timeline, in terms of our timeline given. Because I know internationally, you see, people are getting off with, especially with the cannabis operation. And I am looking at Jamaica and I'm saying that we are so well positioned. And I'm wondering if it is when the consultation will finish and when we'll start going to serious operation. And I would like to find out also in terms of consultation, if there's a budget for such consultations.
Member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Whilst we listen to the argument put forward that consultation are taking place where the cannabis operation is...
With what?
The cannabis. We're not there?
No, we haven't gotten there yet. That's why I paused, because sorry, remember that. I thought it was we were just referring to the report on the trade facilitation. I'm going to move to the Cannabis Licensing Authority right now. But I was just making the point, members, that Member Paul had said that we have got to look at having maybe some almost like a retreat, just focusing on bringing the whole element of efficiency and trade together. And Member Jackson is now saying maybe more appropriately under the committee that deals with economy and production. But what I'll do is have a discussion with the chairman of that committee, but I still feel that I'm in understanding, my understanding was that in the Ministry of Economic Growth, one of the new departments was the one led by Senator Auburn Hill, which my understanding was they were looking at this whole issue of economic growth, and some of this would fall under it. I still feel we can inquire, but I think maybe it is something that we should take a look at to determine whether or not we're moving as quickly and as efficiently as we would want, given what we have gotten here. But I'll have the discussions with the chairman of economic growth, and we can make that determination next week, members, when I have more and better particulars. With that, I think let us move on to we were about to embark on the Cannabis Licensing Authority.
Chairman, I know you want to move on, but just for clarity, the business of trade facilitation is a part of the overall transformation program.
you keep throwing different people under the bus.
No, I'm assuming that members are fully aware of the transformation program that is taking place nationally. Trade, right, started to. The trade facilitation resides within MICAF, because we control most of the border regulatory agency.
Yes.
And the supporting ministries would include the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Finance, and MEGIC, the one that it's just been mentioned. So just for clarity, I'm just giving you that.
All right. Okay, members, can we move on to the Cannabis Licensing Authority? And who is here from Stalin?
Yeah,
if you want to give us just a quick overview of what was what program you had in this budgetary year, as by the estimates of expenditure that Mr. Campbell was referring to, and then we can get an idea of whether we are following or going to achieve the program that we set out to achieve.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, morning, everybody. Before I jump into that, I would just like to indicate that at the end of August.
Mike, please just turn it. Yeah.
As at the end of August, the authority granted 55 licenses of various categories, and we have issued 44. Now, the distinction between a license being issued and a license being granted is simply this. When you are granted a license, you would have satisfied the due diligence process, so your applicants are fit for purpose, and you would have satisfied the fit for purpose. Your facility would be fit for purpose. So you'd have satisfied the fit for purpose requirement. Now, at that stage, you would be granted a license. Now, upon the payment of the requisite licensing fees and the security bond, you would be issued with a license. So, just to reiterate, we have 55 licenses that are granted, and 44 being issued.
Yeah, no. Sorry, I don't understand that. If you said that I want a license.
Yes.
So I go in and I apply.
Right.
So the first thing you do is what? Issue it or grant it?
No, the first thing you do is when you satisfy the fit and proper requirements.
Yes.
That means that you would have gone through a due diligence process.
Right.
Right. You would be given a conditional approval status.
Okay, that's a new one.
So I missed that point.
Okay,
you'd be given a conditional approval status.
Yeah.
Now, at that stage, you will be notified that you have passed the first stage, and you are given now 6 months initially to build out your facility.
Right.
Right. So our enforcement officers now would go and do an assessment of your facility.
Yes.
To see if the facility is fit for purpose.
Exactly.
Now, at that stage, upon a successful report, then you are granted now a license.
Granted a license.
Right.
So 44 of these people were granted.
55 of these persons have been granted licenses.
Oh no, then that's the other way around. That's the
Right.
other way around. No,
Right.
you said it the other way around, which is why you said 55 issued, 44 granted. Am I correct?
Well, no, I said it the other way around.
All right.
Right.
Well, okay.
Right.
So, good. So 55 of these now, they have gone and looked at it and said they are
granted. They
have been
are fit for.
granted, right.
They have met the fit for purpose requirement and the fit and proper requirement.
Gotcha. Yes.
Right.
So then now, what then happens?
So they need to pay the fees to transition into the full licensing status, where the license
And
can be
of
issued.
those 40,
44 have successfully done that.
all right, so there are 44 entities that are now up and running. Fully structured. Okay.
It is all local, or there are persons overseas?
If they are all local.
In other words, are these...
There is a mixture. You have persons who are local and you have persons who are overseas investors who have joined with local persons to apply for licenses.
From my colleague, isn't it, Mr. Allen,
Yes, sir.
that the legislation has
A substantial ownership arrangement.
substantial ownership,
Right.
What is that?
which 51% has to be local,
Right.
and it can be up to 49 foreign. So within all of them, you can
At
have
least 51%.
right. Within all of them, it is possible to have up to 49% in each, because the law just requires the 51% local ownership and control
Right.
as a minimum.
So, Mr. Chairman, it is correct to say that all licensees are Jamaican, local. Because if you're 51%, because what you don't
Majority
want
ownership.
is for John public to believe
Yes.
that anybody can come here and just apply and get a license. Because that is what part and parcel of what is out there now. But more so, Mr. Chairman, whilst we are on it, I am in support of because you represent an area that had paid the price for where
Absolutely.
it is it now.
We're heading
And
there.
I
yes.
move the motion in Parliament that the ministry must find a way to embrace the small farmer, the man who just plant to a half
Absolutely.
acre. You understand me? Because I am hearing 55. What I want to find out from I can't see your name, sir. Mr. Lincoln.
Mr. Allen.
Mr. Lincoln
Allen.
Allen. Yes.
Mr.
Allen.
Allen.
Lincoln Allen.
Lincoln Allen.
Yes, sir.
Are there a limitation? Is there a ceiling cap to the number of licenses that will be granted?
No.
No. 2, how is it? Because from what I'm gathering and from what little I know, you really have to have good money or real money to invest in it. Fine. But we still have small farmers whose livelihood...
All right, hold on. Because I think we're going the same way. If you may, I think maybe what Mr. Allen has to explain to us. He has said that he has gotten these applications. I'm not certain what the application is for, because this entity may just be like one of these houses. I want to know what's the difference between that and how are you treating, as Member Clark is saying, how are we treating the farmers? In other words, there's a difference between the retail and the production. And I think I want a clear idea of what it is. How is this industry being structured to benefit Jamaica? So you have said that 44 licenses have been issued. These are licenses for 44. These are issued for what?
All right. So the different license categories are 21 for cultivators license of various tiers.
These are the farmers.
These are the farmers.
21.
21.
But, Mr. Chair, please, with your permission, for the concern of my colleague here and many, could you, Mr. Allen, give a breakout for those 21 cultivators?
Well, let me go through. Hold on. We're doing, let us sort of structure it. Give us a big picture first. 21 cultivators. Continue. Just give us the of the 44.
21 cultivators, 7 of which are tier 1. 9 are tier 2 and 5 are tier 3.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. What does tier 1 mean and what does tier 2 mean?
I'm going to go through all of that, but let me try and get that. All right, just let's go through. You said how many tier 1? 7?
7.
How many tier 2?
9.
And what else?
Tier 3, 5 tier 3.
All right, tier 3.
So tier 1
is 5?
So tier 1
7,
is
9, 16, and 5, 21.
Right, so
okay,
tier 1
good.
is below.
So 21 are cultivated. Go on to the next of the 44.
Okay.
Tell us what the 44 are.
6 processing licenses are tier 1.
6 processing licenses.
Are tier 1. And 13 retail licenses.
Hold on. Why 6 processing are tier 1?
There are 2 tiers, tier 1 and tier 2.
So you have none in tier 2?
None in tier 2.
All right. So 6 processing licenses at tier 1. Okay. All right. What else you have? That's 27.
13 retail licenses.
All right.
So you have 9 retail herb houses, 1 retail herb houses for consumption.
All right.
1 retail herb house without the facility for consumption, and 3 retail therapeutic services.
All right.
3 research and development experimental licenses, and 1 transport license.
R&D and 1 transport. Right. That man must have made the money. All right. So let's start. Let's go back now. So we have all of that. Let's go back to the first cultivation now. So there are 21 cultivation licenses. We had wanted to clarify what's the difference between a tier 1, a tier 2, and a tier 3.
A tier 1 is up to 1 acre. Tier 2 is between 1 acre to 5, and tier 3 is above 5 acres.
Okay. All right. So tier 1 is under 1 acre, and then tier 2 is up to 5, and tier 3 is above 5. Okay. The processing. You say you have tier 1 and tier 2. But all of your processes are at tier 1, the 6. What are tier 1s and tier 2?
The tier 1 processor is up to 2,000 square feet.
Okay. The size of the retail plant?
The size of the facility.
That's tier what?
That's tier 1.
And then above that
tier 2.
Will be tier 2.
Right.
Okay. The 9 herb houses. If anybody has any other clarification, the 9 herb houses. You say, sorry, 13 retail licenses. These are the retail licenses, of which there are 9 herb houses where people can actually go in and smoke, 1 where they can go in and buy and not smoke, and 3 which are retail, retail therapeutics, like a spa? That's like a spa. Okay. And then you have 3 research and development. That would be like the University of the West Indies. Which are the other 2? Case? Who else?
It eludes me right now. I don't remember, Mr. Chairman.
And the 1 transport. Yes. So how that work now? How does one get a transport license? And are you only allowed to transport? The point I'm trying to get at, this cultivator, which is I think where we're going to, I have to determine that I want a cultivator who is licensed. Two issues come to me. What it costs a person to get this cultivator license, because you can, that methodology can be used to exclude a whole host of people. And number two, this person who is transporting and the person who is retailing, are they only allowed to buy from the person who has a license to cultivate?
So, Mr. Chairman, what exists is what you call a closed loop system, right? A closed loop system.
Okay.
And it is so designed to prevent what is called inversion and diversion of cannabis. And by that I mean cannabis moving from, inversion is cannabis moving from the illicit space into the legal regime, and diversion is cannabis moving from the legal space into the illegal space. So we have what is called a closed loop system. So licensees can only sell to licensees. They operate within that closed loop system. So the person who has a transport license, for the purposes of the industry, can only transport cannabis from licensees.
So this one person who has a transport license transport all the legal cannabis.
That person is the only licensed transporter at this time. But there are alternative arrangements that have been put in place while the industry matures.
Such as? I mean,
the private companies that are facilitating the transport, people who we have assessed, we have deemed suitable, we have given authorizations to allow for them to transport the cannabis.
You were going good up to that
Until
moment.
Now, up to this point.
Up to that moment, you had us. We were quite impressed. Member Clark, let me allow you to.
Whilst I will leave you and the technocrats to deal with the larger players, I'm going back to the first tier cultivator under 1 acre.
Yes.
How is it that after all these years of persecution that a man can say, my sweat and tear has reaped success, I am now a part of the formal development, the legal and formal system? How is it that you're going to capture that one young man up in the hills of Orange Hill in Westmoreland?
Why do you only have 7 now?
And exactly when you have, is it that you are not going out there to bring them into the
either
fold?
The information is not out there or the cost too high.
And I did move in the motion, Mr. Chairman, that the ministry should find technocrat consultant to get the small man into it so that they are in the know, they are feeling that they are part of something that they have helped to develop. Absolutely. You and I know that it is from 1970 that some man still serve sentence. Some man damage can't come back to because he was arrested back then. You understand me? So it is, I am saying that they have sown the seed and it is for them now to reap some of the fruit.
Metaphorically.
Yes. Metaphorically, Mr. Chairman.
So the point,
but on a serious note.
But that point you made, it's important for us to know what the cost, what is the cost of me applying for this tier 1? Because if you have not just the cost, but the procedure, because that can be used to
when I leave here,
everybody.
Mr. Chairman, when I leave here, because I know that John Public is watching this session.
Yes.
When I leave here, I must be able to call Billy and say, Billy, your questions have been answered. This is how you must.
Because Billy is sowing the seed.
Because Billy is somewhere sowing the seed.
Yes. All right. But hold on. Let us try. Could you give us the criteria and the cost for tier 1 cultivation?
In terms of the cost, Mr. Chairman, we have estimated it to be a little bit less than $1 million.
I beg your pardon?
A little bit less than $1 million.
It could need to be a lot less than $1 million. Why would it cost $1 million? So hold on, who they pay that to?
Because of the...
Hold on, who they pay that
it's
to?
The cost, you? It's the cost to build out the infrastructure to facilitate.
No. Wow. This is going to take a while. This is going to take a while. Hold on. The $1 million. Let's start. What is the cost of the license?
Oh, okay. All right, fine. So the application fee, if it's a person, yes, the application fee is $300. If it's a company,
it's $300
US. If it's a licensing fee, if it's a company, it's $500. That's for your application fee.
That's the application fee for me to get
US dollars.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, we are in Jamaica. Why we keep quoting in US dollars? I don't understand where we're going. Billy again, Mr. Chairman, Billy don't see US dollar until certain time of the year, no. Yes. So if he's going to wait until that time, he's not going to get registered.
You will never get the license.
I can't do the shipment to get the US.
No, we are talking about exactly. We are talking about cultivation. So I would really love to hear Mr. Lincoln telling us exactly how much is it that Billy needs to pay in Jamaican dollars to get registered?
And where this million come
from? Where it is that Billy must go to get registered?
So as I said to you, the application costs vary depending on the company. Now, for a license to be granted, the cost of the license per acre is $2,500 US. Right?
We didn't hear that. We didn't hear that.
$2,500 US per acre.
US again.
Right.
But
yes, but
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect,
these figures,
on a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
The figures that inform.
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman. On a point of order.
Yes.
Parliament, this committee in session, is saying to the technocrat that we do not need to hear the US dollar quotation.
In our parliament,
we need to have Jamaican currency.
This is not the US Senate.
And that is what we are asking Mr. Lincoln to give us today.
I take issue with that also, Mr. Chairman. Let the record, this mic is not...
I think...
One second. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. You know, I've sat and I take issue with that as well. As a Jamaican sitting in the Houses of Parliament, I take issue with it as well. This is not the US Senate. It is not. And we can't go anywhere in the world and talk about Jamaican dollars. And I join my colleague. We're doing a great disservice to the average Jamaican man or woman who ekes out an existence, who is making a livelihood out of a particular product that has now, once again, Mr. Chairman, that is now a multi-billion-dollar industry worldwide. Even more so, what's even more offensive is that there are persons, we the Jamaican people, have said to farmers who have served their time in prison all 20 years ago or 30 years ago, whether they were trying to export a little thing or grow a little thing or cultivate a little thing, we have said to them that their records cannot even be expunged. And that is very, very unfair for you to say to a man.
Wait. No, I didn't follow that last part. Because I'm agreeing with you up to that. What did you say about the records?
There are persons, if you have served time for taking steps to export, your records cannot even be expunged. Your records can't. But the industry worldwide, now the industry has moved. So once again, so when he's finished telling us, when he's finished calculating the Jamaican figures for us, I would like us also to say now to the ministry that they should be making a recommendation or something to the Ministry of Justice or the Ministry of National Security that persons who received a sentence, whether it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago, for taking steps or for otherwise cultivating or something, that those records of the recommendation should be made for them to be expunged as well. Because you can't have persons now transporting marijuana has now become this sort of international commodity, which for health benefits, all kind of different medical benefits and relaxation and therapeutic and everything else. And now I know you have one person. I don't even want to know who this person is that has a transport license, because no doubt it's a big player. You know, whereas Johnny, who was trying it 20 years ago in the car in the rain, you know what I mean, now can't even get a criminal record expunged to join something. So we have to, I just think we have to look at the human element of it all. I'm upset now, and I'm noting
Member Taylor, I think we are all at one with this, and I think that there are a number of issues. I think the point that was made about Jamaicanizing the currency is one we all agree with. But Member Paulwell, you've been edging. You know, but you keep going back there.
Mr. Chairman, I think the problem is far more fundamental than both our colleagues are making it. I should remind all of us that we were responsible for approving the regulations governing the CLA. Member Terry Long, I think you need to hear this point. I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing that we have a serious problem, and this is far more fundamental because we have given the CLA authority. We have provided them with clear regulations, and the preoccupation has always been how to prevent contamination, how to secure the product from the illegal to the legal. And it's a conundrum that we as a country have to face because we are largely driven by the United States of America in developing these regulations. So it's not the CLA's fault. The problem, Chairman, because of the regime that we have embarked on, no poor person can be facilitated, can get obliged, can get away in this industry because the kind of system that you have to put in place, understandably, that the CLA is governing, the security cameras, the total preoccupation in tracking one plant to its final place. No poor person is going to benefit from this. So it is placed in the right ministry, a ministry that tries to promote small and micro business. It is going to require the ministry to assist those farmers. They're going to need to have access to capital. They're going to need access to training, and that is now not being done. So the small farmer, those persons who used to run and hide from the police, they are not being facilitated. And it is not the CLA's role. It is broad policy engineered by the ministry itself and the minister.
All right. Member, Mr. Hold on. Let me. We've said a lot. Let me hear the suspense.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to segue from where Member Paulwell indicated that it is a bigger issue than just the discussions that we are having, but to make it very clear that one of the strategy that the ministry, the government has embarked on is the Alternative Development Program, what is called the AD program. Under that program, the target...
Alternative Approved Development.
Huh?
It's
Alternative Development Program. Sorry. Under that program is where the small scale tier 1 and so persons are being targeted to facilitate their incorporation into the legal space. The program has started off in a compound town, and it is targeted also for Orange Hill. There are some challenges with Orange Hill in terms of the land acquisition in order to facilitate the farmers there. They're using lands, but legally it is not their land, and we are working on that to have that sorted out. But for the program that is in a compound, what the program embodies is the CLA looking at its regulation and establishing the kind of guidelines that enables a small player to be connected, and accordingly MOU was signed with a facilitator, somebody who is going to be purchasing. Remember that the legal arrangement for Jamaica as signed off by the Parliament is to participate in the medicinal space, and so to facilitate the conversion from what is typically, that kind of use out there too. So there's need for the type of plants to be properly accounted for, labeled, tested, and to be properly managed so that the consistency and the kind of quality and standards that is required to facilitate the transition into the medical space is being facilitated through the AD program.
All right, Mr. Spence. No, please. Let me just say something to you. The reason why I had indicated I wanted to start with the cannabis license is because I, as a member of Parliament, have a particular vested interest in this, and I feel very strongly about it. Now, let me just say something, and I say this with impunity because I think that I reflect the ideas of everybody on this committee. As far as I'm concerned, if this program and what we have in place does not in first instance benefit the small farmers, the medium farmers, the persons who have been in the industry for a long time, then I'm not into it. Because the fact of the matter is, if you allow this program to go simply to, in other words, just big persons with capital now, by the time you get all the alternative development in place, there'll be no place left for them. So the fact of the matter is that before we go too far down the road, let us ensure that a space is carved out for those that are to benefit from it. And every member of Parliament in here feels very strongly about that.
Mr. Chairman, what I would hope for you to have said is that both should be parallel.
Yes.
None leaving none. No. Because judge my days, if we allow it to go according to how it is being said to us, or seem to be going, then the liquor man will have no space.
Absolutely.
And I heard the $1 million purported. $1 million don't mean a Billy alone. Billy can get in 2 brother in 3 cousin put together and come with something. So it don't have to be an individual. It can be a small company. But we must encourage the formality of it.
Yes.
And we must encourage it as much as possible, so that the government of Jamaica don't get the beating that they are now getting in that circle. Because I'm still not comforting that the ministry is aware of what is happening out there on the ground. Yeah. Well, and if the small man is left out, then don't expect the sector, that sector of the ministry, to grow smoothly, because you are going to have hiccups caused by those who think that you have left them out.
Just to finish my point, because a number of persons want to come in. You are indicating that there's an alternative development program. There were 2 areas designated, a compound and Orange Hill. For 2 years, I've been working closely with the farmers from Orange Hill. As you indicated, there's a problem with land. It's not that we don't have land. Land is there. And like 1,000 acres owned by government. We've been in touch with Ministry of Lands, Forestry, everybody. I've spoken to the minister who has been in contact with me, Minister Shaw. He has put it in the hands of some technical advisors. I think maybe some are here. But the fact of the matter is, it's going nowhere. That is the feeling on the ground. They're not getting any land. Everyone is organized, meeting, doing everything possible, but just not getting the facilitation. And yet, you will see, how many tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cultivators going, and the persons who were in it at the start have been left behind, sitting down and not getting the assistance necessary. Now, I'm just saying, this is why it's so important, because the Cannabis Licensing Authority and the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries are directly in charge of this. And I'm telling you, I'm not comfortable with how it is being managed. We are not comfortable with how it is being managed. And we are going to, one way or the other, we're going to come to some conclusions on how we're going to move forward with this, because it cannot be allowed to be managed how it is being done to this point. I have a number of persons. Hold on. I have Member Jackson, Member Terry Long, Member Daly, and I think Member Campbell and Stewart. Or Member Campbell, no? Member Stewart. I know we are, but we may have to come back, because I think this is we're going to get information, but we may have to send for more, because quite frankly, members, I think we are all here. It's not a matter of just having a discussion and moving forward. I think we're going to call back with recommendations on how we're going to make the changes that we are comfortable with and recommending to Parliament. So this is not a one-shot affair with the Cannabis Licensing Authority and the Ministry. So,
Chairman, before we go, that if and when Mr. Allen is coming back, that the legal officer and the people who have put the legal framework together could come here to tell us exactly.
And maybe a representative from.
So that we, it can be sent out in the public space as to what really applies. And because I'm particularly interested in this AD program, because because it appears to me that if we are going to lock out all those plants with the THC content at a certain level, we are bringing a certain strain which is GMO modified, and I'm like coconuts. I fear that what we had as an indigenous plant will just go by the way, in the same way we allow our coconut industry to die because of those false narratives which are out there. So
it's going to be, we're going to get to the root of this. Member Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a few questions for CLA. I listened to the discussion and I concur with the observation made. When I read page 1 of CLA submission, approved strategies for 2019-2020, in particular, establish appropriate action plan, policy, legislation, and regulation for long-term development. I wonder whether or not that is embraced in the comments made, Mr. Allen. To my comment from my colleague about the foreign currency, a year and a half ago the CLA came here. My colleague will remember. I raised about the foreign currency quotation. I was told it's a policy decision of the CLA. We raised our concerns then, and the CLA is back here. And are you saying that your policy means that it must stay as it is? No, I raised it then about being told in Jamaica by a government entity that a fee in US currency and not in the national currency. But I mentioned that in a passing way. Now I concur with my friend here from St. James about the dual nature of the development, both for small micro farmers and probably processors, and for larger ones, which you need investment to leverage the external market that the small operators might not have the financial capacity. And that's why I gather the 51% was inserted in the legislation to preserve a Jamaican dominance. With that said, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Allen, the integrity of your organization is critical. And much of what my colleagues were speaking about is the integrity to protect everybody. Number one, you have a due diligence procedure in granting license, and you consult with all your law enforcement entities. I have an interest in that side of it as spokesperson. Is it the case that persons who might apply to your organization for due diligence check, your organization let me see how to phrase this. An application is made to the CLA. One of the security entities gives you a reply of interest in an applicant. Is it the practice that you go back and seek modification for those security checks to satisfy particular applications that you might have?
Well, that's a very specific.
Yes.
I am not aware of any such arrangement.
Mr.
None
Allen,
since I've been there.
I am aware of one case.
Yes.
That was submitted to the new one that is set up.
We seek clarification, not to modify any report.
Okay, when you got a report on May.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Where my man Colonel thing entities. MOCA. Oh. You have a reply from MOCA on May 8th of an applicant. They have an interest in that one. And by June 27th, 2017, you got another reply which says they have no interest. I would love you, and when you come back again,
I will investigate that because
fine.
I'm not aware of it.
Because I raise it, Mr. Chairman.
It's a serious allegation.
Because it speaks to the integrity of the regulation. And when my friend speaks about the small farmer, and when some applicant can get these kind of circumvention of processes to facilitate them, and is it a small applicant? Billy, right? His application, well, you can't even apply because of what we heard here this morning, because the structure of it makes him not possible for him to go along.
Mr. Chairman.
You're next. No, member Terry.
Just to indicate,
hold on, one second, member Terry. Member Jackson, you can turn.
So I raised it, and I deliberately didn't give any public description of names deliberately, right? But where it occurs, you see, Mr. Allen, this place is a small place called Jamaica. Small place. What is important for our regulatory authorities is that their integrity is preserved at the highest level, particularly when we are in an area of international trade, right? We see the whole thing with Transparency International and our standing there. It is in effect corruption when you circumvent the formal processes to facilitate individuals because of public connection or so on. It compromises the integrity of the entity, and I say to you because ultimately you are responsible. So you say you'll investigate and you'll come back report.
Yes.
So I'll go on another matter.
Chairman, can I just get
Absolutely,
greater clarity? So you are saying that a report was sent by MOCA to the CLA
yes.
May 8th?
Yes, which was not deemed to be favorable to the applicant.
So it was an unfavorable report?
It was an unfavorable report.
And then a subsequent report was sent?
A subsequent report.
What's the date of that report, please?
June 27, 2017.
June 27th.
Yeah.
And what you said happened after that?
No, a favorable report
2017.
comes. June 27, 2017.
Oh, that's before my time. Okay.
All right.
Okay. No,
Okay.
please
quickly because
yes, I just want to lay some things that he can respond to. I need some, and it's not contained in the report. The cost, what's the rent of CLA's offices? Annual rent. Approximately.
Approximately 30 million.
30 million.
This includes maintenance.
It includes maintenance.
Yes.
Or in addition to maintenance.
It includes maintenance.
30 million a year?
30 million per year. Yes. How many square feet of office space you rent for that $30 million?
Over 7,000.
7,000.
7.
So the office space that you rent, it include total accommodation costs, which would include parking facilities and so on?
No, parking is, we get a certain amount of parking, but we have to find
What's the cost of that?
What's the cost of the parking, additional parking that you incur?
The cost of the parking is approximately 250,000 a month.
250,000 a month?
Right.
12 times that?
That's 3 million.
3 million, so roughly 33 million per year for your accommodation costs.
No, for parking.
No,
included.
No, 30.
No, he said 250,000 a month for parking, didn't you?
30 plus 3, Mr. Chair.
No.
No, 3 million something.
I'm saying he made the point that it was 30 million was
for the rent,
actual rent, but that they pay an additional 250,000 a month
so that
for parking.
Makes it 3 million, call it 3 million, so it's 33 million overall.
So that's roughly $33 million for you.
Parking.
Yes, $3 million a year for
250,000 a month for parking.
$250,000 per month for parking.
Approximately, sir.
Mr. Allen, how long now have you occupied this space?
June 2018.
Since June 2018.
Since June 2018.
Right.
Last year. Right. You intend to be there for how long?
Well, we are effectively locked into a lease for 5 years.
Say that again?
We are locked into a lease arrangement for 5 years.
You lock yourself into a lease arrangement. So you have locked in yourself for $33 million a year for office space per year.
For 5 years.
For 5 years. Right. Was that a reasonable, prudent decision by the organization in your judgment, Mr. Allen?
The thing is, the authority was searching for office space for quite a while, and that kind of space to accommodate the organization was what was available.
Mr. Allen, you know, when you're here long enough, you learn a lot of things.
Yes, sir.
A few years ago, the OPM did an extensive review of government properties throughout the country to establish unused spaces, that government-owned properties. You are telling me that your agency, your ministry, could not have found any one of those places that you could renovate to an acceptable standard for what you're doing and still save out of it, and you lock yourself into, you lock
the government,
the taxpayers,
the country. Yeah.
You lock the country into a $33 million a year cost for your offices. No, Mr. Henry, you tell me you are in charge. The buck stop with you.
The arrangement, there was a prior arrangement before I joined the CLA, and it was for a smaller space, right? But based on the demands of the industry and the need for the organization to evolve and grow to meet these demands, we were already locked into a rental arrangement. So we simply
add on to it.
We took a bigger
so you make
space.
A bad situation worse. When did you join the organization, Mr. Allen?
I joined in March 2018.
March 2018.
Yes, sir.
You inherited this arrangement, or you helped to formalize it?
I inherited the smaller arrangement. Yes.
So you finished the deepening of the arrangement.
The thing is that there would be consequences to come out of that 5-year arrangement that existed before. So, I mean, the best option that was placed on the table.
No, wait. You're saying there was a 5-year arrangement when you saw it in 2018. There was a 5-year arrangement in
there
place?
was, yes.
So what did you do to come out of that? You got into
we were locked into that
hole.
We were locked into that 5-year arrangement for a smaller space, but based on the industry demands, the authority would soon outgrow that space.
Yeah, but I think what Member Jackson is saying is that if you knew that you had what was seemingly like a bad relationship, a smaller space, locked in for 5 years, that the way out is to actually take more space and lock the government into 33 million a year.
The thing is, Mr.
For another 5 years?
The thing is, Mr. Chairman, what would have happened then is that we would have split the agency into two. Because we would have already committed, I would have inherited a system, an arrangement, where a smaller space was rented, right, for the organization, and the organization, based on the growth trajectory of the organization, based on the strategic direction of the organization would have needed to expand its staff complement, which it has.
But Mr. Allen, how many staff do you have now compared?
Almost 50. And when I joined, we only had 18.
Yes, but Mr. Allen, I think that's the point. You have 18 and you move to 50. To house that, you're spending $33 million a year. As a country, we have constraints, and part of the problem is when these decisions are made at a technical level, it reflects because there are other areas of our economy and of government service where everybody who has served in government knows that there are economic constraints. There are so many things we want to do. So when we hear of a rental that's going to house those persons, and the rental is $33 million, I mean $3 million alone for parking, it's something that makes us stop and consider.
Yeah. In the prime, Mr. Chair, this is a regulatory entity, not a commercial entity that is selling patties and want people to just come off the street because it's convenient. There are certain operations which people have to come to. Regulatory entities have that description. It's located in the premise of commercial real estates in Jamaica, New Kingston. So you started with a staff of 18. You need more. It was a bad situation by account to start with, and you just entrenched it some more.
And you're saying that you cannot get out for 5. What sort of implications are there if you attempt to break that?
It's something that possibly needs to be looked at, but the establishment of the organization is actually 65. So we are still recruiting persons.
And that's another area we're going to.
So you're probably going to expand the room, the space more, so that 18 to 65. That bring you up to $33 million, and you are recruiting more. So probably next year when you come, you're at about $50 million.
So, Mr. Chairman, make it fix.
No, for your office space.
The member have to give somebody.
We are still. Right. The staff will be housed in the same space. I don't understand.
No, how much more staff are you recruiting?
We are going to recruit the full complement of the staff establishment, 65. So we are at 50.
You're at 50 now?
Yes.
So you have 15 more?
Yes.
And the office space you have would be adequate for the 65?
Suffice, yes.
Well,
I want to make a request. When are you going to get out of that $33 million cost to the taxpayer? Because, no, I said it against the background. When I read your submission on page 1 of your forward-looking, I would want to believe that is in your forward-looking. It's not. So it's not on your agenda. But it's on the taxpayers who has to burden it when many things, including drugs in the hospital, can't be afforded.
I don't want to be
and roads can't be fixed.
Member Jackson.
And others.
I think the point has been made, and I think when we're wrapping up today, because we're going to have to go back. Member.
Yeah, just to note, Mr. Chairman, that I mean, there was a sort of a remark, but just to know that in all fairness, one could never accuse the central government of not building new roads and new highways. Every single where you go in Jamaica, everywhere you look, there's a new road, there's a new highway from communities everywhere.
Kind of going
no, because you didn't hear it sort of what your comment. I heard it.
That's the
well, just to indicate, Mr. Chairman, that that our Jamaican government, because we're part of government as well, cannot be accused of not spending money on building roads and more highways. So just to indicate that to the member. Also, Mr. Chairman, whilst we understand that, for decades, there has been this sort of the high sums paid for rentals and everything, we can also agree that there's been a concerted effort to move away from those kind of largesse arrangements where rental is concerned. But what I want to get, there certainly has been, but what I want to get from Mr. Lincoln is that in terms of
Allen. Yes, Mr. Allen.
Lincoln Allen, Mr. Allen, the separate and apart from just jumping at figures, let's look at it, in a more, apply some sort of methodology to it. The price that you're paying per square footage, is it the normal or the standard price per square footage that would be expected for place in that particular community?
It's standard because our arrangements, we engage the National Land Agency, and they provided us the technical assistance required to acquire the space.
All right. So in terms of value for money, based on what prevails within the economy or within that locale that you are established, then it is
consistent with what obtains there, and we are not the only agency of government that is on that building.
All right. And the other thing I wanted to ask, okay, fine. And these are, all right, so you've answered that. I won't belabor the point.
Mr. Taylor,
what I want to get at, Mr. Allen, is that Mr. Allen, you've answered. What I want to get from you, Mr. Allen, is back to the issue at hand as it relates to the regulatory framework for cannabis, legal cannabis. There's been much said international as relates to the banking sector and the fact that our local industry players, persons who are not getting into the industry, that they're having a difficulty with interfacing with the banks, for banks accepting the funds. We're told of restrictions re-US, restrictions re-America, restrictions regarding the acceptance of US currency if the business has anything to do with cannabis, and all those things. So even then, whilst we work on a framework to get Billy on track, to get Billy legalized and to get Billy to be able to make some money from the marijuana, where are we with the banking regulations to ensure that our local producers and Billy and other persons, the small farmers who we're hoping will get into the system, that they will now have access to banks and to be able to bank their funds and continue to grow their to grow their enterprise?
The thing is that we have had a series of discussions with the Bank of Jamaica, and my last update was that they were supposed to get back to us. We have not made much progress in that regard. I know Minister Shaw has engaged Ambassador Marks about engaging the U.S. Treasury about seeing how best they can make some arrangements to facilitate our Jamaican banks. I know with the Safe Banking Act that is being contemplated in the U.S., there possibly will be some relaxation of the banking arrangements in the U.S. to accommodate funds coming out of the cannabis industry in the U.S. So there is possibly a glimmer of hope there. Right, but as it stands, though it is critical to the build-out of the cannabis industry, it's not really in the remit of the Cannabis Licensing Authority to agitate for that kind of activity. But I know that the Minister Shaw is aggressively trying to find a solution for this problem.
All right. So, well, first of all, then, I must say, as always, Minister Shaw really is at the forefront. Wherever you place him, he's at the forefront of his ministries. And I'm happy to know that there has been progress made since Minister Shaw has taken over that ministry as it relates to getting banking laws and banking regulations, banking rules relaxed in the U.S. to facilitate our Jamaicans as they plan to grow this industry.
Are you saying it wasn't happening before?
And he made specific reference to Minister Shaw and his meetings with Ambassador Marks. No. I don't know who else was there or what. I can just speak to what the member has said.
Minister Samuda.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, I want to caution us as committee members, I see time and time again, and I'm sorry that the member left, but I'm going into my comment. But I think we have to be very careful, very, very careful, because we might inadvertently impugn the integrity of civil servants and impugn the integrity of organizations that come here when we say, oh, well, I have information that, or I hear that, or so forth, without having, if you have not physically seen a document in black and white, then what we could do, Mr. Chairman, rather than say, well, oh, well, my information is that so and so and so, so and so, depending on the context, Mr. Chairman, depending on the context, I think it would be prudent for us as a committee to be fair to civil servants who come here. If we have certain information that we have not seen or vetted or perused or whatever, write them. Hold on, not Denise. I'm sorry, member. Write to the persons who are coming here, Mr. Chair. It has to be fair. Because remember, you can say something, but then the media interprets another way, John Public interprets another way, even though that's not your intention. But it's just we have to remember that we're playing with minds. Different people comprehend things differently. So to be fair, when there are certain things that could be controversial like that, and we don't have facts or proofs or 100%, let's write to them and say, listen, I've heard of so and so and so, so and so and so. Can you pull up the files, bring it back, and answer these questions? And then now we can say yes. We have, and so forth. It's to be fair.
General Justice. Members, no.
Thank you, Chairman. Been quite patient. Through you, Chairman, to Mr. Allen. Are there any plans to embark on a comprehensive education program so the small farmers like Billy? I have a number of Billies in South Manchester who would love to be part and parcel of the entire program, but they need some information. So I would encourage you to embark on some educational programs. And Member Terry Long spoke about the banking arrangement. I was about to speak to you, ask you about the corresponding banking arrangement, because there are some challenges there, and to see where we are with it, so persons can know exactly what to do when they embark on the program. So we look forward to hear what you have to say in that regard. Thank you.
Mr. Allen, 1 second. I'm trying to wrap it up, so I'll give you opportunity to respond. But based on I'm going to make some suggestions. Member Daly.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to find out if there is ongoing applications or if there is any timeline placed on, not timeline, numbers in terms of how many applications you're taking, either per annum or if you have a close-off time. And I would also like to find out in regards to the Tier 1 farmers, do they look their own market or you provide a market for them?
Let me quickly answer the last one first. We operate a closed loop system. So as I said earlier, so you will not be granted, you will not be issued a license until you have a downstream buyer. You have to identify, and the CLA will help you to identify a buyer, right? And that is how we preserve the integrity of the cannabis industry, right? So you will not be issued a license and you find yourself in a state where you have all of this product and nobody to take it from you, because it lends itself to end up somewhere else, right? Now, in terms of, there is no cap on the number of licenses that are granted any year, right? You make your applications, they are processed, and if you meet the requirements, then your license is granted. I don't know if I answered the question. All right, thank you.
All right.
The education program, we have started going into some of these communities. We have gone to St. Anne, we have gone to a compound, we have St. Elizabeth. So we have started going around the country and educating persons with respect to the requirements of the application processes and the requirements of the authority in terms of maintaining compliance, just increasing knowledge.
Do we have to make a request, or can I make a request?
You can make a request. You can send us an email and we will respond to it.
All right. Members, I'd like to make some suggestions. Obviously, this discussion is a very important one, and I think members feel very strongly about it. We're going to have to have further discussion with the Cannabis Licensing Authority. I would like to sort of guide it, though. The first thing that I want is for us to get from the ministry. The discussion I'm having, Mr. Spence, I'm saying this because what I want is for you to be able to, when we come back to the next meeting, and I'm hoping I'm capturing what my members are saying, I don't want to just hear what is the action plan of Mr. Allen. What I want is a policy. What I want is an overview of what we're doing to develop the cannabis business, the cannabis industry in Jamaica. So the first thing I want to know is, what's this process of assimilation? Why is that important? Because I don't want to, that question that Member Daly asked, a very serious one. The farmer, what's the name of your farmer, Mr. Clark? Joe? Billy? A person like Billy has been growing, would like to grow, wants to become farmer legal, but he may not know the retailers, he may not know the R&D people, he may not know the medical persons, so he's going to be forever left out because he's not moving in that social. So it is the role of the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries to be putting all these people together so that the opportunities to the small farmers become apparent. Otherwise, it will become a business for only the big farmers and the big developers and the big R&D persons. So it's incumbent on the ministry to have a policy that deals with it. So that's number one, the general policy. Number two, you made the point about the alternative development. You started by saying this is how you wanted to assimilate small farmers in, and you said that a compound is on the way. Orange Hill was another. By the time you come back, and we will set a date for you very soon. Next week we have some issues, so it may not be in the next 2 weeks, but you'll be back very soon. I need to know why, after 2 years, we have identified land, looked at it, done everything. The land is owned by government, everything. Internally, we just can't seem to move the system, which means that there's no urgency to it. These are persons who have gone out and gotten other persons who want to become investors and partner with the small farmers, not going anywhere. This must be driven by the ministry. And the fact that it is languishing, which is the only word I can use, means that there's no sense of urgency in the ministry to develop this industry for Jamaica in that way. No, because if there was, this problem would have been resolved quite a while ago. So when you come back, be prepared. As a case model, I'm going to use the WAG for farmers from Westmoreland, the farmers, the group, as well as the Orange Hill farmers, which are organized, ready to go, but nothing is happening. So investigate and find out why it is, because it's a real impediment there. So as far as I'm concerned, maybe some work is going on at a compound, but the alternative development program is not, at this point, cannot be in any way, shape, or form designed, said to be successful, because it's not moving in the way that it's supposed to be moving. The third, you made the point about some issues were talked about, public education, etc. Again, if you have that overall policy where you're trying to get persons involved, then that education, they must know what their opportunities are. Everywhere we go as members of parliament, I know in St. Elizabeth, Montego Bay, anywhere you go, farmers and persons will come and say, MP, what should we do? Obviously, it's nebulous, and I said there's no clear path. So, but you can't do the public education if you're not clear in your mind what is the policy driving this, and you don't have a clear path. You know, if you don't know where you're going, any road can take you there. But you must know where you're going and determine that this is the way we're going to get there. There's some, fourth point, there are some real serious issues with regard to this and impediments. One has to do with legal issues, correspondent banking, etc. The lawyers here will know far more about it than I do, but this seems to be a real problem. And there are other issues because of what you said about that closed loop. But that closed loop, as long as you have that closed loop, it's going to be a problem for anybody else to come in. I think your legal department, the ministry, and Ms. Bailey, I think this may be an occasion for us to ask the Solicitor General for some advice. Because quite frankly, this is an industry, we keep talking about it, but 3 years later we are not moving in the direction that we thought we would some time ago. So I think if we can look at these issues as a starting point, we're going to, I would ask you to start right away, and at the root of it, just be mindful of what every member of parliament on both sides have been advocating. We all want, we think the potential for a cannabis industry in Jamaica is somewhere we have a competitive advantage, and we think that there's great potential, but it is not going to be successful in our minds if the small farmers and those persons who have been involved for years are not included in it. And the only way they're going to be included is if the ministry at the lead, which is clearly your ministry, has not developed a policy that shows how you intend to make them a part of the industry. And quite frankly, when we started this discussion, we have not gone through it. We want to go through some of those money details, because we heard about the licenses, $200, company $500, and I think individual $250. But then where you bold us, especially the center stump, is when you say that, you know, for a small farmer, tier one, his infrastructure is $1 million. And I heard a discussion about cameras and this and that. If you go down that line, believe me, all of this is designed to exclude a whole series of people out of the industry. And I'm telling you, you look around this room, if it's one thing we're united on, is this issue that we're going to ensure that the benefits of this go to the small and micro businessmen in Jamaica. So we're going to ask you to come back. So, and quite frankly, the details of your whole accommodation, please let us know. Certainly, I mean, I'm just saying to you, it's a lot of money. I mean, $3 million a year. I would have thought that would have been the rental. I didn't know that that would be the rental for the car, just the parking. So we have to look at it and what the options are for you, because we're spending a lot of money on housing ourselves rather than developing the industry. So we're going to ask you to come back. Mr. Spence, obviously we have not been able, I need to apologize on behalf of the committee for the other departments and agencies that have been here from this morning and have not been able. What I'm going to do, there were some specific departments and agencies which we had wanted to see. We're going to give you another day to come back. I will give you those specific ones and allow so that you don't have to bring everybody. There are only about 2 or 3 others. We'll give you that in writing and we'll give you a new date to come back.
And finally, just one thing, Mr. Chair, because Mr. Lincoln Allen, if I recall correctly, I'm trying to remember. So the initial team that would have started these regulations, when was that team formed, or when did they start to pull these regulations together, or to look at them and pull them together? When was that?
The activity started in 2000. Well, the regulations were promulgated in 2016. So I think the work started early 2016.
Okay, early 2016.
Right.
All right. And
there was broad consultation. There were town hall meetings. In fact, I was advised that the fees being set in US dollars were actually the result of broad consultation. And the thought behind it was that if you set the fees in US dollars, then even if there is inflation, the authority would not need to increase fees any at all. The fees would be constant. I mean, but it's something that we need to do further exploration.
Let me make a suggestion to you. Let me make a suggestion to you, Ms. Allen. Maybe not a rule we want to go through today. Members, yes. let me suggest to you that what we have here is a situation where I think we all here have an idea of what we want to achieve. Let us see if we can get the additional information, and when we meet back with you, let's look and see how we can make suggestions and make recommendations to the executive arm as to how we can more clearly achieve what we all want to achieve out of this industry.
Yeah, and just finally, again, when they go back to their technical team, because what I want to find out is the technical team, is it an old team, is it a new team, is there a mixture now, is there a new technical team, what is the component? Because certainly when they go back, for registration, Mr. Chairman, I don't know what the overseas component is. I don't know what they're importing or exporting or what kind of porting for there to be some sort of inflation or deflation or something as well as the export fee. I'm just saying that though because as I think of you're registering. So what is affecting the movement of registration fee? The registration is a flat $20,000 or $30,000. So maybe they can tell us that as well.
Mr. Terlang, and we are at one at this point. I think what we need to do is and certainly they would have oversight bodies. Our bottom line is to get all the information so we can make the proper recommendations to you with the benefit of all information. So let's get that information and we can sit through and go through it. So with that, members, I don't know if there's any other information. If so, I'm going to thank the MICA for being here today. Apologize again to those members who came, but this conversation on cannabis was very, very important in my mind and very necessary. So I'm very happy for that. And with that, members, I'm going to adjourn the meeting until next week when we shall meet with the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. Meeting now adjourned. Thank you.
The date is Wednesday, September 25. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. The Jamaica Urban Transit Company, JUTC, says no buses will be deployed in August Town and Papine, as such units would come from the Rockfort Depot. The announcement, which was made on the company's Twitter account Wednesday morning, noted that slain JUTC employee Michael Donaldson operated from that depot. Communication from the JUTC informed that the company would be having a phased rollout of buses in other areas Wednesday, starting with routes they believe are safe. The company on Tuesday morning halted operations following the fatal shooting of Mr. Donaldson. The disruption of service continued into Wednesday. It is believed the incident was in retaliation for the fatal stabbing of 37-year-old Aquino Britton, a taxi operator on Washington Boulevard in St. Andrew Monday night.